All right, everybody, gather around. It's question time. Is Build-A-Bear Workshop eugenics? Oh, wait, sorry, wrong video. Uh, when you think of an alien in a game, what do you picture? One of these? One of these? Maybe one of these? You might have noticed an interesting trend in alien design. A couple legs, some arms, torso, a head. It's awfully human, isn't it? Of course, not every alien is a humanoid, but a lot of your everyday, hard-working aliens are. Why is that? Well, plenty of reasons. Let's play a game. Can you find the weak spot on these guys? You see, I didn't even have to teach you that. You just knew by looking. The first time you fight an enemy, you immediately want to know exactly what you're up against, and beyond set values like health and damage and speed, you want to get a feeling for how they act and how to fight them. These little grunts act like grunts. They're small, they run around waving their arms and screaming, and your first encounter is pistol whipping them for their lunch money. You know where they stand. But when you get to the cafeteria to buy your square of $2 meatloaf, you see that grunts are much braver with their older brothers around. Familiar human behavior and dynamics are a pretty solid foundation to build depth in your alien enemies, and not just in gameplay, also the writing department too. Storytelling is all about language. Body language, verbal language, it's what acting's all about. Our human eyes and ears are most accustomed to human, or maybe more broadly mammalian, emotion. You can't really tell what or if a gecko is feeling. It's a lizard. I don't know, maybe it's hungry? But if you shape those scales to be a little more human-like, give it the ability to speak and convey emotions, and congratulations, you now have a grouchy bounty hunter uncle with a heart of scaly gold. Throw in a little bit of cultural individualism, some shamanistic practice, and look at that. Now you have an entire species worth of clay waiting to be molded and fired into whatever shape your heart desires. Yeah, there's more to the Krogan species than that, but just shove all those details into the codex. Nobody really needs to know about... Wait, those bumps on their backs are energy stores? How did I not know that? Isn't it funny how so many of these humanoid designs don't really trigger that uncanny valley feeling? The Asari are literally just blue people with whatever is going on in the tentacle dome zone, but other than the occasional janky face animation, I'm never really weirded out by them. The uncanny valley is most strongly associated with human-like movement, so maybe we can forgive the blue face paint and tentacles as long as the facial muscles are moving the right way. The fact that we also hear and see them speak human language might also make us a little more comfortable to that effect. Although I do wish sci-fi games would lay off with the magic translators a little bit, just so you can hear what these like completely alien species sound like. Like sure, the Asari basically have human mouths as far as I can see, but the Turians have like these split mandibles, and it seems like there's some kind of hole or slit all the time where air can pass through. Wow, only a few paragraphs into the script and I'm already talking about holes and slits. Anyway, my point is, how do the Turians sound like this?
Don't worry, Commander. We're all working together.
But the Vorcha sound like...
Go away. Talk too much. Gabor's thugs get no more. We leave.
Maybe if there was a Vorcha squad mate, they would make them sound cooler so you'd actually pick them. Actually, no. Fuck that. The Turians should sound like the Vorcha, and the Vorcha should sound like...
You stay away. We kill you.
Still like the Vorcha. So we can do aliens that feel human, but what happens if we try humans that feel alien? How do you remove or distort the most essential qualities of people while still keeping them recognizably people? I present to you Combine Civil Protection. Couple legs, some arms, torso, face robbed of any human emotion, nothing but a cold stare that never blinks. Yeah, that's a human, all right. Behind the face is a voice that sounds human, kinda. But there's a clear degree of separation. You can't talk with them, you can only be spoken to. If you listen in on their radio communications, you'll hear endless strings of monotonous code words, numbers. They all sound like human speech, but don't try to ask them how their day is going. The only ones who haven't had their emotions completely stamped out of them are the new recruits who patrol the streets. These are the human who the Combine make alien. They represent the goals and the desires of the Combine, to reduce humanity into a resource. They're as inhuman as the treatment of their citizens, which makes them the perfect enemy for an anti-citizen, it's the thing that he's called that. Ironically, Combine methods like forced relocation are based on things that actually happened in human history, or maybe that's not even ironic, I guess that's just appropriate, but YouTube doesn't really like people talking about these kinds of topics because you can't put a Coke advertisement in front of it. Lots of aliens take inspiration from human events and culture. I mean, who doesn't like to play God just a little bit? Take our previously mentioned lizard lads, the Krogan. Krogan are going extinct because they can't have babies, and now most of them are just wandering around by themselves doing whatever they feel like doing, usually fighting people for money. When you first meet the Krogan, you learn that they're very individualist. But if you go to their post-apocalyptic homeworld, inside of the wrecked concrete structures, you'll find a wrecked social structure. Despite the genophage giving an entire species their midlife crisis, the Krogan still live in clans. The clans date back thousands of years and are so ingrained in their culture that even those who leave the homeworld still identify with their clans. Even to those living in complete exile from Krogan culture, the clan is integral to identity. So here's this weird contradiction. Collectivist culture with individualist behavior. In sociology, it's pretty commonly understood that wealthier cultures have more individualist tendencies, and poorer cultures have more collectivist tendencies. So why is one of the most dirt-poor species in the galaxy also one of the most loner species? Because the Industrial Revolution and its consequence. I'm just kidding. Well, actually, kinda. There is sort of a line from Krogan industrialization to full-on nuclear war, but the real reason goes back to their first contact incident. First contact is always a major turning point in any alien story, but you might take it for granted when your story already starts at the galactic strip mall. When the Solarians discovered the Krogan slugging it out with themselves on their homeworld, they decided to, culturally uplift them by bestowing them with advanced technology, which is basically a sugar-coated way of saying give them big guns and sick them on your enemies like dogs. Those of you who have played Stellaris can probably guess how that went, but if you need a clue, try checking the big chapter in the Codex called The Krogan Rebellions. So the Krogan very quickly received all of these technological advancements, allowing them to prosper and for the population to grow, but they still felt that need to fight to survive. Living on a world as hostile as Tuchanka, it's all they've ever known, even fighting each other. They've even evolved to have the eye spacing of a typical prey animal. So when the Solarians' enemy was gone and the time for fighting was over, the Krogan kept fighting for their survival. They fought anyone, and literally everyone, and so the Solarians developed the genophage. By guaranteeing the extinction of the Krogan, the Solarians crushed the incentive for them to band together. So again, the fight for survival turned inwards within the species, and the outcasts were left to scour the galaxy alone, working as muscle for pirates, mercs, other temporary odd jobs. There's a lot to potentially dissect here, especially if you want to draw comparisons to human history. Can you think of any real-life examples where an advanced civilization met another less advanced civilization, resulting in the massacre of vast swaths of people, the survivors forcibly assimilated to the extent that their modern descendants have difficulty identifying with their own heritage? Anything springing to mind? Of course, the difference between Krogan and indigenous populations is that while the Krogan can potentially see a light at the end of their tunnel, they'll never get to experience the crisp, refreshing taste of Coca-Cola Classic. Coke Classic, like the good old days. Anyway, back to the topic of First Contact. In a lot of sci-fi games, First Contact is that thing that happened years ago that all the characters talk about, like, man, remember that first time we met aliens? That was crazy, you should have been there. And you just sat there in a cutscene because you were born like 50 years later, like... But the tricky thing about portraying a first contact incident is that it's hard to impart that sense of mystery and surprise when you already know what's coming. If the front-facing premise of your story is, this is the first contact incident and here's what happened, then basically everybody knows that the aliens are coming. You can still play ball with that, of course, maybe even, but you'll find a lot of sci-fi writers just skip directly to the next stage, usually either diplomacy with aliens or war with aliens, but there is another option. What if you ran a persistent galaxy online for years, then quietly patched aliens into the game so that one day your players are just haplessly minding their own business and... So now there's an ongoing conflict with front lines and damaged stations and refugees, and now I'm profiteering by selling shiploads of materials at a 2-to-1 margin. I know I may have just made Elite Dangerous look like the coolest shit ever for those of you who have never played, and in fairness, it is pretty cool. But I'll also warn you that it's one of those games where most of the reviews are from people with hundreds or even thousands of hours talking about how the game could be a lot better. The future of the game is hazy at best, and the most recent expansion was a bit, unfortunate. But Frontier Developments did do one thing right, and that's the first contact of the Thargoid. Or third contact, I guess. The Thargoid were featured in previous games in the franchise, and even discussed in interviews with the Elite Dangerous developers, but nobody was sure exactly when or how they were going to arrive until they just started pulling people out of hyperspace. And since then, they've unfolded into quite the riddle. They attack, but we're not sure why. We think we know where they come from, but we haven't been there yet. They have eggs, but we don't know what they taste like. We're not even sure when or if we'll ever get answers to these questions. And while a part of me is kind of worried that Frontier will go out of business before that happens, who else is doing this? Who else is playing out the real-time unveiling of an alien species and letting players have a part in the story? You know, for all the sci-fi we already have in games, not to mention the... It still feels like there's a lot of untapped potential in the alien. Not just the idea of life outside Earth, but alien life, strange life. Not just something we've never seen, but something we've never imagined. I know it might be hard to think that we haven't run out of ideas, since coming up with ideas is basically all we've done for the past 20,000 years or so, but we only reached pigeon dating simulators in 2014, and we went from that to Death Stranding 5 years later. I'd say we've still got plenty of crazy ideas to try, and granted, most of them won't really pan out, but the barrier to entry is lower than ever. So bring on the aliens. Bring on the ALMAOs and the lizard boys, but try some crazy shit. Run a persistent galaxy for years and let the players discover them. Make a horror game where they move through a fourth dimension like that one Minecraft mod. Combine Spore's evolution mechanics with XCOM's squad-based strategy. Make a real-life place where you can go personally design your own creatures, bending the rules of nature with the power of sewing needles and...